What's up everyone and welcome back to Reload Reacts. My name is Trey and today we are looking through r/ProRevenge, the subreddit for those who get back at the ones who wrong them, and are usually quite good at doing it. This first post is by Rocky Moose. Landlord is jealous of my income, raises my rent $500. Years later for $20,000. In the late 90s, my wife and I were just married, just getting started, and we decided to double income no kids for a few years to save up for a down payment on a house. The dot-com bubble was still rising and I was a newly mint software developer. I had an entry-level job for a while, and then got recruited to a new city and a new job that paid 3 times what I was making before. It was an offer too good to pass up. I ran the numbers and it was a no-brainer. By living frugally and saving my entire salary, living off just her income, we would have easily enough in a year to put 20% down payment on a new house. We rented an apartment in the new city that was listed for $950 a month. The landlord was a real estate agent who owned a 2-bedroom condo as an investment property. Let's call him Hank Wazowski. Hank was a thin, grey, no-nonsense guy. He was pleasant enough, but perfunctory, dry, and had no sense of humour. He made a point of explaining that under no circumstances was he responsible for maintaining the garbage disposal, and that it was not included in the rental agreement, and that he would not be responsible for fixing it if it were to break. Okay. He seemed slightly amused by us, a clueless, young, newlywed couple, but I could tell he wanted to rent to us because we were very obviously a safe choice as renters. We filled out the rental agreement and the credit check, and this is where my troubles began. Hank looked hard at the credit application where I listed my job title software developer and my income $75,000. For a 23-year-old in his second year out of college in the late 1990s, this is a small fortune. Throw in my wife's salary and we were over 6 figures in income, renting an apartment far beneath our means. Like I said, Dink is the way to go when starting out. I can't believe how much money you make, Hank must have said half a dozen times, muttering under his breath. I explained we were saving to buy a house and that we were only going to stay in the apartment a year. We might stay a few months after the term is over. Would month to month be okay after a year? Hank assured us that would be fine. We saw Hank only once during the year and he again mentioned my salary and how he couldn't believe that's what software developers were making. It was awkward and I gave a vague reply. Anyway, a year later, we had found a house to buy, signed all the papers and were making plans to move. The new house wasn't going to be ready until 2 months after our rental lease was up, so I called Hank to ask if, as discussed, we could simply extend the lease by 2 months before moving out. Hank assured me on the phone it would be no problem, and he would send over an extension for us to sign. The extension arrived in the mail and it included a month-to-month clause and a $500 increase in the rent. I flipped out and called him. Hank, why are you increasing the rent over 50%? That's too much. That's more than my new mortgage is going to be. He was super condescending to me. OP? It's what the apartment goes for now. I would be losing money by renting it for less. I tried to reason with him, but it was very clear he knew we could afford the $500, had no choice in the matter, and he was going to screw us over as best he could. He got angry with me for arguing my point, and I'll never forget his parting words. You don't have to like it, OP, you just have to pay it. My wife and I tried to figure out a way to move early, by putting our furniture in storage for a couple of months and crashing with friends, but it just wasn't going to work out. I swallowed my pride and wrote out the check for $1,450 for the extra month. A month later I wrote a similar check, and then we moved out. I made sure the apartment was spotless before moving, but still Hank withheld $300 from our security deposit for BS things. They were just a way for him to squeeze a few more dollars from the kids who made too much money. $100 for cleaning? Sure. But $300 was obscene. In my mind, he had screwed me over $1,200 and there was nothing I could do about it. What made it even more infuriating is that I saw the ad Hank put in the paper after we moved out, and he listed the apartment for rent at only $150 more than we had been paying originally, not the grossly inflated $500 increase, and it didn't rent. A month later I saw the same ad and he'd lowered the price to $75 more than we had been paying, and I assume it got rented since the ad stopped appearing. Fast forward about 5 years, Life is good, the house is good, we have a baby, and even though the .com bubble has burst, I'm still employed. One day out of the blue, I overhear one of my co-workers, Phil, a senior developer, talking to the guy working at the reception desk. "Hey Mike, I'm expecting someone to drop off paperwork for me. If a Hank Wazowski asked for me, tell him I'll be right out." I freeze and get a taste of bile in my mouth, remembering how I had to write out that name on those checks all those years ago. There's no way it's the same guy, right? I walk over to Phil, who's still by the reception desk. "Phil," I say, "how do you know that name, Hank Wazowski?" Phil explains that Hank is his real estate agent. "I bought my condo through him several years ago. I'm selling my condo now so I can buy a house. So I'm going to ask him to be my agent again. Do you know him?" I tell Phil that I used to rent an apartment from Hank and described what he looks like. Phil confirms the description. It's the same guy. Wow, small world, right? And on cue, right then the front door to the office opens, and in walks Hank Wazowski. I stare in disbelief. He's carrying a folder of papers and doesn't recognize me. Phil and Hank shake hands and they talk for a few moments. I stand there silently, wondering what to do. Phil finally says, "Hank, this is my friend OP. I think you've already met?" "Yes, hello Hank, good to see you again. My wife and I were your tenants a few years ago on Blank Street, remember? The software developer who rented for a year saving to buy a house? Well, this is where I work, here, with Phil." Hank's eyes indicates how he remembers me, and he's starting to put it all together. We shake hands and he says yes, of course he remembers, and asks how we are doing. "Oh, we're just fine, thanks for asking. Phil says that you're his real estate agent. Small world, isn't it?" Hank nods pleasantly. He doesn't remember the details of our last conversation. I do some quick math in my head. This is the early to mid 2000s. The real estate market is very strong and easy money for any agent. The crash of 2008 is still a few years in the future, I start to think out loud. Selling the condo for around $150,000 to $200,000 and you're looking at houses in the $500,000 range. So that's $650,000 to $700,000 in total transactions. An agent getting 3% on the sale and the purchase is getting around $20,000 for his trouble. That's a good commission for the agent, isn't it? Hank's eyes flash and I can tell he remembers everything about me now. Phil is surprised at my passive-aggressive tone. I am enjoying the uncomfortable silence. Hank deflects my question, saying it's complicated, and tells Phil to send back the papers as soon as possible. He shakes hands with Phil, looks at me, nods and goes to leave. "It was really good to see you again, Hank," I call behind him. He exits the building. As the door is shutting, I say a bit too loudly so that Hank can hear, "Phil, don't sign anything just yet. I have a story to tell you." Phil looks at me and says, "OP, what the hell was that all about?" He looks peeved and confused at my behavior. I tell Phil the whole story. The rent, the $500 increase, the security deposit. You don't have to like it, you just have to pay it, everything. "Phil, you can't use this guy to sell your condo and buy a house. I hate him, he's evil. I'll help you find another real estate agent, just use anyone but Hank." So the good thing about Phil is that, well, he's a great guy. He's a little surprised at my story and has always known Hank is a straightforward guy. "But I totally see him doing that to you," he admits. "There's no way I could use him now." What a D. Then Phil's eyes lit up a bit. "What do you want me to say when I fire him?" I have special feelings for Phil now. We came up with a plan and I made sure there were some key phrases in Phil's repertoire. We planned it all out together in advance. My only regret is that I didn't get to see Hank's reaction in person a day later when Phil made the following phone call while I stood behind him listening. "Hi Hank, it's Phil calling. Yeah, about that. I've decided to get some other quotes from other agents. I'm not going to sign up with you." Pause. No, you shouldn't give me a discount. You'd be losing money if you did that." Pause. "No, this is just a decision I've made. No, it has nothing to do with OP." Pause. "Well, you don't have to like it, Hank. You just have to accept it. Goodbye." Click. And it was the greatest revenge I could have ever imagined. Through a chance meeting years later, Hank got screwed out of $20,000 in easy commissions. And the best part is Hank absolutely knew it had everything to do with OP. That was really satisfying, actually. The next post is by The Hofstetter. A woman let her dog S on the airport floor, so I S on her plans. While walking to my gate at LAX, I noticed a woman whose dog was in the middle of doing its business. The woman was loudly FaceTiming with her back to the dog, so I assumed she didn't notice. That was likely the thought shared by the gentleman who tried to get her attention. "Excuse me, miss," he said in a polite tone. The woman glared at him. "Your dog?" he sheepishly continued, pointing out to the mid-poop pup. The woman rolled her eyes and went back to FaceTime as the man slinked away, seemingly embarrassed. "Some people," she bellowed to her FaceTime companion with no hint of irony, "are just so damn rude." When her dog finished, the woman started walking away, leaving everything right on the airport floor. Another woman tried to stop her. "You're not going to clean that up?" she asked, as shocked as the rest of us were. "They have people for that," the offender replied, disappearing into the crowd, as much as someone yelling into their phone can disappear into a crowd. I stood near a pile and warned people to walk around it, while someone else got a maintenance worker's attention. No one said anything. We were so shocked that anyone could be that horrible. When I got to my gate, the woman was there too. Great, we were both going to Tokyo. When I travel abroad, I get embarrassed by other Americans doing things 100 times less embarrassing than leaving animal feces on the floor of an airport. To make it worse, her dog was now barking at everyone who walked by. I have nothing against people flying with their dogs. I do it often, but it is a privilege I take seriously. My dog is well trained and behaves better than most people. He certainly behaves better than that a-hole. Speaking of a-holes, there's a pet relief area inside LAX past security, just 2 gates away from where the party pooper let her dog go to town. It didn't matter. She was the type of person to litter 3 feet away from an empty garbage can. While her dog barked at the world, the woman had moved from FaceTiming with no headphones to listening to music with no headphones. I didn't like to throw around the word sociopath, but I don't know how else I could explain just how selfish and terrible of a person she was. I bet her car was somewhere in long-term parking, parked across 3 spots with paint on the bumper from the child's bike she hit without leaving a note. Everybody else tried to ignore her, sitting as far away from her as they could. I am not everyone else. I sat down right next to the horrible woman. "Are you going to London on business?" I said. "I'm going to Tokyo," she responded gruffly, annoyed that I interrupted her DJing. "Oh," I said. "Then you better hurry. That flight got moved to 53C. This is the flight to London." I figured I could give her a little moment of panic as payback for how terribly she was treating everyone. I didn't predict what would happen next. She grabbed her bags and dog in a huff and stormed out of the gate without even checking. She was so self-involved, she didn't notice that the monitor at our gate still said Tokyo, and almost everyone at the gate was Japanese. Based on her actions, she believed me that the flight had been moved, so she's also an a-hole for not thanking me. Some people, I thought as I watched her rush away from the gate without stopping her, are just so damn rude. The flight to Tokyo was at gate 69A, so the 53 gates were on the other side of the next terminal, and I felt guilty knowing she probably berated some poor clerk who had to explain to her that there was no gate 53C. I don't know if she made it back to this flight before we took off or not, but I didn't see her board and I don't hear her dog. Her missing her flight was not my original intention, but it would be a fine punishment for her being so rude to everyone and making a low-paid stranger clean feces off the floor. What makes me wonder if I went too far is the knowledge that Delta only has 1 flight to Tokyo each day. Oops. Maybe she can rebook on another airline. I hear they have people for that. Yeah, wow, that's insane. I've never heard of anyone like that. What is that? This next post is from a deleted user. While we're on the subject of the Homeowners Association, here's the story of how my parents' HOA tried to use a 40-year-old rule to stop them from repairing hurricane damage and got the shaft for their trouble. A few months back, as you may all remember, this was 7 years ago, Florida got pretty beaten up by a couple of hurricanes. My folks lived down there, and while none of the damage that they sustained was life-alteringly horrible or home-destroying, homeowners insurance kicked in and they had some water damage through the roof. They also needed a new one because of all the shingles that had come off / debris that had punctured it. My folks looked through roofing options and determined that a metal roof would be a great option to reduce damage/maintenance on their home. Plus, it would serve as a more energy efficient option with passive solar collection and fewer thermal losses in the summer/winter. It's more expensive, but my dad was basically our/personal finance incarnate when I was growing up. He's in his 60s and has finally concluded that he has FU money so long that the community is concerned, so the roof was a good investment. It looked like a win-win-win with that roof. Then they reviewed the HOA and saw that as of 1989, metal roofs are prohibited in the neighbourhood, subject to fines and mandatory removal. Reviewing the bylaw further showed that it was clearly referring to older, crappier tin roofs, not a proper metal one like today's market provides, which looks great and has all of those other benefits. My folks wanted to play by the rules though and called the HOA to explain the situation. HOA was friendly and said that they would be looking into that bylaw, and that my folks weren't the only ones who requested that they be allowed to have a metal roof. My parents couldn't get a roofing contractor in for a few months anyway, too much demand since everyone's roof got wrecked, so they waited for a few weeks and got nothing new out of the HOA. Tried again a few weeks later, nothing. After 2 months of this, they said F it and started construction on the metal roof themselves. Popular opinion in the neighbourhood was on their side, and the roof was covered with a tarp that wouldn't last forever. The new roof got installed over the course of a few days, and then we found out about the HOA's essiness. The neighbourhood has a nice brick sign out the front that says "Welcome to Neighbourhood Name." It's very classy, very nice, and was very damaged in a hurricane. The HOA was strapped for money due to other repairs/dues, and some prick had the bright idea to impose as many fines as they could on the neighbourhood to pay for these repairs, starting with my folks. They served my folks with a letter claiming that they were in violation of the HOA and demanded a $25,000 fine and that they remove it, which is, of course, absurd. My poor mother is very much a play-by-the-rules sort and she was worried sick. Dad's ex-Navy and a contract negotiator, he essentially checked his 60-year-old knuckles and said, "Oh, you the little S's wanna play, do ya?" So they set up about researching and making some calls. Poor mum kept waking up at 1 AM unable to sleep, and I felt terrible for her as she went through this, but then they had a breakthrough. A few weeks after being served, I'm fuzzy on the timeline since I don't live in Florida, it may have been less. There was essentially a burn them at the stake meeting of the HOA, where my parents could defend themselves for an absurdly short amount of time and the HOA could rip into them for daring to defy their wrath. So my mum, because she's more social, has a better temper than Dad, comes up to speak, and lets the HOA know that they can't do this. HOA smirks and says that they sure can. They have a 40-year-old statute saying that they can. Mum says, "You do, but I have state law on my side, which supersedes your statute." Turns out there's a law in Florida stating that an HOA, or really any regulation, cannot be used to prevent an eco-friendly improvement from taking place on anyone's private property. And wouldn't you know it, the passive solar of the metal roof counts as an eco-friendly improvement. Turns out the roofing contractors have dealt with similar stuff before. When Dad mentioned what was going on to them, the contracting office pulled out a few letters of accreditation and a few past cases where the court had determined that their product was eco-friendly and forced the HOA to pay all legal fees. My mum produced all of this for the SEHOA, who had to admit that this was in fact ironclad. Strapped for money as they were, they couldn't afford to pay a lawyer. HOA's head growls. Is that all? Mum turns up the sweetness to 11. No. I see in the bylaws that we can vote to impeach board members at any HOA meeting and to elect their replacements. I move to impeach all of you. I nominate my husband, and she rattles off a list of names. HOA is stunned. While Dad looked into the legal, Mum looked into the new neighbourhood. Popular opinion was on their side, and the hearing was public for the neighbourhood. Mum convinced a majority of the homeowners to attend and remove the board for their crappy policy. With that, my parents are now on the all-new board, and Dad is putting his contract negotiation skills / own craftsmanship skills to work repairing the front entrance. And metal roofs are now allowed by the all-new HOA. What a bad move. That was awesome. That was awesome. That was some pro revenge, some sweet pro revenge right there. And anyway, that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories in r/pro revenge. Let me know what you'd like to listen to next in the comment section below. My name is Trey, this was Reload Reacts, and I will see you all in the next video.